a lot to talk about. There's, as always, a whole lot of absurdity going on out there in the world. And I wanted to just start out with this post from the National Organization of Women that says, big, bold, that trans women are women. Just, again, this is the National
I think that now has lost the plot. I think they've lost the plot because now it's the National Organization for Women, right?
That's what I thought.
I used to have a now poster on my door when I was a kid. I mean, I was like 9-10 years old. I had this now poster on the door. And I remember the slogan was, "Now is a great time to be a woman." Not so much anymore.
Well, yeah, it seems like maybe they've turned into a men's rights organization, and maybe it should be the National Organization for Men.
The nom.
But it really is just astonishing to me. The post says, trans women are women. They deserve equal opportunities, healthcare, a safe community and workplace, and they deserve to play sports. Well, duh, I don't think, again, nobody
those things have ever been them.
Nobody's trying to say that people can't play sports. Nobody's trying to take away healthcare. Nobody's trying to take, this is, again, this false narrative that's just infuriating. They have a right to their identity, respect without conforming to perceived sex and gender identity standards. To our trans folks, we stand with you. Again, it's just shocking that they are choosing to throw women under the bus, and they must be getting quite a nice hefty donation in order to be posting stuff like this.
Yeah, interesting how now doesn't want to mention the women who are really behind all of this. The interesting women the women that I really find interesting are the daughters of those who have decided to transition, the trans widows, of course, where their autogynephilic husbands have been gaslighting them and basically putting them under domestic abuse. I want now to maybe address that situation, because that's a huge problem that is really happening to women. Where you have a woman who is, take Richard Levine's wife, for example, who has basically been drafted into supporting her husband's surgical transition, and they always dump the wife. Always.
Or they, another an interview I did with a trans widow where she went into therapy and the therapist said, well, as it turns out, you're a lesbian. And she's like, no, I'm not. She was completely thrown under the bus. And so now the fact that we have this organization who's basically going to support autogynephiles who have no love for women, who are basically trying to appropriate our spaces, appropriate our sports, appropriate us as a category. It is really just shocking.
Don't you think? I mean, I was thinking about this today, about all these women like now who are supporting these guys. This is a men's rights movement. If you look at the people who are at the forefront of pushing this, they're all men. They're all men. And they don't like women. They hate women. They're very clear about that in the way they talk. Don't you think they're just laughing? Don't you think they're just laughing at all of these? And I think handmaidens is the right term for it. All these
I tend to cringe at that term. It's one of those terms that I feel like, has just been overused and misused. But in this case, I do feel like, whatever the term is, they must be yucking it up because they've got all these women basically, going, okay, yes, sir. Take our spaces, take our sports. You are definitely more oppressed than us. You can have our scholarships. You can have our careers. You're definitely more marginalized than us. We definitely will allow you to go into the bathrooms with our daughters. We'll pretend like you can be a woman. Yes, we won't question that. And if you want our uteruses, maybe we'll just have to give them to you too because you're so oppressed. You wonder if they just sit around thinking like, how far can we push this? How far can we manipulate these women? And I think they're laughing at us.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's no question to me that when I see, like, we did that film last week about that referee, that football referee. When I look at him talking about his jealousy and hatred towards women, and now he's pretending to be one, I see that as a hateful act. This is a deeply hateful thing to do.
Yeah.
Obviously it comes from the proliferation, the acceptance of kink culture, of pornography, of deeply disturbing pornography that is out there, accessible to the youngest of young people. I mean, of course, it's related. It just astounds me that now has done this. It's like saying, good for you, you porn freaks. Good for you, you fetishists.
Go misogynists, go bullies.
Yeah,
Let's go
yeah.
ahead and let's abuse women. Let's take away their rights and
Mm-hmm.
protections. Woohoo! I mean, it really, it just is astonishing. So,
and this is a little bit tangential, but when Alex, you were talking about pornography accessible to the youngest of people, a lot of parents
Yeah.
think, oh, we've got internet locked down. My children aren't seeing this. A good friend of mine, when her son was in pre-K on the school bus, older kids on the bus, because kids up to 5th grade ride that bus, older kids with phones were in the back of the bus downloading porn, showing it to the pre-K kids. So, it is, it's everywhere. And I know that's a bit of a side issue to what we're talking about, but it really is all coming from that same place.
yeah, it's all coming from that objectification and sexualization of women, and for these guys to insist that they're women, even though they're not. I mean, it's astonishing to me. And the next thing I want to talk about is this press release from Awesome Merchandise, which is it's a producer of merchandise for those of us who like to maybe pins, hats, stickers, all different kinds of, shirts that say things. Anyway, it says, yesterday we canceled an order and closed the account of a customer who promotes anti-transgender ideology. Heaven forbid. In other words, a woman. As a result, we have been receiving multiple negative and abusive messages. Again, I would like to suggest by abusive, they probably mean not affirming that they did this. Emails, DMs, comments, and reviews calling us out for being misogynistic and anti-woman. As a company,
because you are misogynistic.
Because they are, right.
Because pro-woman does not have to mean anti-trans, but that's what you've decided that it means.
Exactly. And then it says, as a company, we believe in communicating a positive message. We do not tolerate abuse on any level, and we wholeheartedly stand by the trans community. So they're basically saying they're going to embrace the trans community and, again, throw women under the bus. And I think what's ironic is that I wrote this on their messaging board. I said, this is a confusing message. You're basically saying that you support bullies as long as they are the right kind of bullies. Trans activists are bullying anyone who doesn't 100% accept their ideology. Why do you support that, but not those of us who are trying to stand up for the rights and protections of women and girls? Sounds to me like your real message is that you 100% support the abuse of women. All right, I posted that within maybe a minute. I get, oh, shut the fuck up, TERF, as my response. Again.
From Awesome Merch?
Standard.
Yeah, from
Merch?
Yeah, no, just from, someone who responded. In this case, it was Ashworth. But the fact that, and basically I said, thanks for proving my point. This is exactly what happens. We are being silenced. We are being bullied. And Awesome Merch is taking the side of these bullies rather than women who are trying to stand up for rights and protections.
Well, it's the same thing with the companies that banned our book, Partners for Ethical Care's book. Smashwords and Lulu both banned our book because they call it abusive and hateful. And I've challenged them both to tell me what's abusive or hateful about it. And we get no response. They just ban us. Lulu won't even respond to our questions, like, hey, are we getting our royalties that we earn? They don't even respond to us. It's the same thing. It's this pressure to call the bullies the victimized ones, and the victimized people are being cast as the bullies. It's classic Darbo. Deny, attack, reverse, victim and oppressor.
Yeah, it's really scary because we're systematically being shut down on social media. In this case, we're not able to get our message out if we can't order merchandise. I mean, it really is increasingly concerning. I actually was putting some stuff together to take to the local thrift store this morning, and I had an old
Mm,
dictionary that I was going to take, and I actually decided to keep it because
Mm.
I thought, I might need this because definitions are being bastardized right and left. Reality is
yeah.
being completely undermined. This might be of use someday so that I can like
Someday
look
when
back
people
and
go,
say,
what do words actually mean?
right,
Wait, let's look and see what words
Yeah.
actually
what
mean.
they actually meant instead of
Mhm,
this obfuscation that is continuing to happen.
mhm.
And even in the last I had I did a course for parents about the jargon and about the words, and I found that just in the last basically 2 or 3 years, there's actually words that have been created from nothing. And these are things like cis sexist, envy-phobic, and this is very, very deliberate. Well,
Transmisogyny.
transmisogyny makes a lot of sense to me, far more than cis washing. I mean, at least with transmisogyny, I can understand what that is. And I was talking to somebody about cis washing, and they're like, holy, I don't even know like what
Is that like a
do you
car
know what
wash where you like run your cis people through the?
think about whitewashing. So basically, when we cis wash history, as in
We
we
pretend
rewrite
that
it
people were cisgender. So we pretend that all these people were actually cisgender when they weren't. Is
yeah,
that
well,
Ironic.
exactly.
How ironic is
And
that? Because that's exactly what they're doing. They're going back and taking. I saw an article that claimed that 7 of our past presidents were gay or transgender, including Obama. They included Obama in that.
well, it's funny you say that, because I was told that Joan of Arc was actually a
Amelia
trans
Earhart?
man.
Amelia Earhart as well. So basically, all the strong women in history, they weren't really women
Right,
because
because
there's
they
no
couldn't
such
have
thing
been
as a
real
Oh,
strong
women.
and
Yeah.
powerful and accomplished woman. If a woman is
yeah.
strong and powerful and accomplished and smart, she's actually a man.
Mhm.
Well, even just
Wow.
even recent people like Prince, they're transing them. And I even heard an interview with the Bruce Jenner's fake female persona, where he said, oh, and Boy George. I'm like, well, have you asked Boy George if he identifies as trans? If anybody wants to see it, I'm sure people doubt us, it's called Genderquake. It's available on YouTube. You can watch Bruce Jenner sit in a chair, smugly just disregard all of the women in the room. He said to somebody they should kick a woman out.
So does that mean that all the men
Yeah.
who are wimpy and kind of insignificant and kind of weak are actually women?
Beta males. Beta males are all actually females, apparently. Yeah.
So
Well,
any man
I
who likes to
personally,
Don't see it.
cook, anyone who's sensitive. So it
yeah.
turns out that any man who likes to eat quiche is probably actually a woman.
Well, and
Yeah.
I've heard Boy George. I've read him talk about. He's like, I'm gender nonconforming. I have never claimed to be a woman. I'm not a woman. I'm a man who's gender
Yeah.
nonconforming. He's very clear about that.
It's so
Yeah.
frustrating because basically, again, I was listening to an interview with Johanna Olsen Kennedy, who is this doctor who is
Oh,
butchering children right and left.
yeah.
And she no longer talks about trans kids. She now talks about trans and gender nonconforming kids because now we're going to
Yeah.
trans
Mhm.
all the gender nonconforming kids as well because oh my gosh, what a revenue stream. Which brings us to this next topic, which is this incredible revenue stream. There was just an article. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, it says life and death for patients. Startups fill the LGBTQ wellness gap. And it basically talks about this company Plume, which
Oh,
has
they're awful. They're
they're
awful.
awful.
Terrible.
And so Plume is an online company where people can get
Mm,
these dangerous drugs without actually going to a doctor. And it says
mm,
that this therapy is a process which a person takes estrogen or testosterone to align their physical characteristics with their gender identity. I
yeah.
still wish I understood what gender identity even meant. Like,
Yeah.
Get out your old
Well,
dictionary
I
because, oh,
know.
the old
It's
dictionary
not going to
doesn't
be
have
in there,
anything.
Maria.
It's
It's
not
not
going
going
to
to
be
be
in
in
there because
there.
it's not a thing. Because
Yeah.
it's not a
yeah.
thing.
And
And you
so,
know
so,
what?
so we now take medications in order to change our external appearance to match our identities. And again, I just want to ask, like, why is it that gender identity is privileged above any other identity I might have? You know, if I have an
Yeah.
identity as a skinny woman, how come my insurance company won't cover liposuction? If I have an identity as a
Uh,
woman with big breasts, why won't it pay for breast augmentation? If what if
yeah.
I identify as a taller woman? Would it pay for me to have growth hormone? I mean, there are all these different identities that are being ignored, but for some reason this identity is being privileged. And why? Why?
Because
Because
it's
there's a ton of
publicized
money. Yeah.
money.
I mean, Plume is one of the most cynical advertisers I've ever seen in my life. You know, they claim, I actually did the sign up, and you know, when you're signing up, you don't even have to be sure of what you want. You know, you can say that you are assigned female at birth, which means, you know, a woman, and that you're feeling non-binary, but you don't even really know what you want to do. You don't even really, you know, so there's no, it's basically just a dispensary for these, a controlled substance. I mean, testosterone, if I was to sell it to a guy in a gym, I'd get in deep trouble for it.
Yeah, it's a controlled substance. It's reportable to the local health department because it is a controlled substance. And
I'm curious. I'm curious. When you sign up, do you have to provide any kind of proof of your age or anything?
Well, when I signed up with a fake email. Well, you know, the thing is that you could theoretically, if you were a 16-year-old, you could just ask your friend who's 18 to sign up and get get whatever for you. I mean, there's no
There's no
the
control.
there's no
safeguarding concerns are so clear. I mean, it's and if
It's
I
sort
was
of
to
like
go
the
to,
pornography sites that say you have to be over 18. Are you over to 18? Click here. I mean, there are all
Yeah.
these.
ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, and I think with Plume, what's really disturbing is how they're actively pushing it. They're holding classes to teach people, what it means. If you're not sure, this is what drives me crazy. If you're not sure, take this class and we'll tell you whether or not you're trans. Wait a minute. I thought people knew for sure what their gender identity is. So how is it that people can be not sure if people are sure? I mean, again, it's this whole like nonsensical ideology, but in this case it's damaging people, and this is a huge growth market. If you look at this article, it's got this this growth stream that is incredible, and my concern is that there are certain protections for these kinds of businesses in the US, but there are going to be other countries where these are going to pop up where there aren't going to be
Oh,
protections,
definitely.
where pretty much anybody's going to be able to get access to this. And as we've talked about before, pretty much any woman, if she starts taking testosterone, initially she's going to feel good. It's a steroid, it's a controlled substance, it's a
Yeah.
drug. And there's reasons that we have controlled substances because they can be very dangerous. To me, this would be no different than having a business that started selling heroin online. Of course, it's going to
Yeah.
make you feel better in the short term, but it's our job
Opioids will
to
make you feel
protect.
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opioids will, if you ask somebody who's been a month on opioids whether their life has improved, of course they're going to tell you their life has improved.
I
You know,
feel
their sleep is
great.
probably great. Yeah. Yeah. Just
And,
ask
and,
them 10
and
years
same with
later.
testosterone. I mean, especially a woman my age, my sex drive would go way up. I'd start to develop more
Yeah.
muscle. I'd feel pretty
Yeah.
darn good initially. Unfortunately, it's just, it comes with huge costs. And that's why we need to protect people from this. And the fact
Yeah.
that it's being pushed. And again, I hear over and over and over again that it's not the government's role to interfere with healthcare, first of all.
Or we should trust the
We should
doctors.
trust the doctors. So can we think of some instances where we've trusted doctors and we've had some really bad outcomes? Alex, you
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
opioids.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, and
absolutely. The
corporations.
opioids.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Alex. Yeah.
No, I was going to say the opioid crisis is the, the Sackler family, what they would do. I mean, this is exactly the same as testosterone. They managed to release paper after paper, peer-reviewed studies that were all about how opioids have got a bad rep and they're not really addictive. And what does that remind us of? That reminds me of Moser, who's trying to get the paraphilia section removed from the DSM.
Yeah.
Activist scientists, or
Right.
I don't know why.
I actually heard my mother had an opioid addiction, and she was told that if you have chronic pain, that you cannot become addicted to opioids. This was the narrative that was given. Of course, that's absurd, and we know that that's not true as more and more people have died. I'd also like to just talk about thalidomide again. We know that testosterone, if it's taken by a woman, it can be a teratogen, which means who knows what happens if she gets pregnant while she's taking it. But also, all the other harmful effects. I think thalidomide is a great example of doctors saying, hey, it's going to make you feel good without making any, without researching the side effects, and also with covering it up. I mean, they didn't immediately come out and say, oh my goodness, look at these horrible birth defects that are happening. They were trying to pretend like, oh no, everything's fine here.
Corporations do the same thing, and I'm thinking about DuPont and Teflon. And there's just this documentary, or a movie, not a documentary, but it was a movie based on the true story. DuPont knew that the chemicals that were being used to make Teflon were horribly carcinogenic. And they were dumping it into the water. They were dumping it into the drinking water in West Virginia. Whole communities have been suffering, from cancer because of them dumping this. And it took a multi-year battle in the courts, and they fought it tooth and nail. And I mean, it's the same thing. We don't know what these hormones are doing to people. We don't know.
And we have other cases of drugs, such as fen-phen, which was used for weight loss.
Weight loss,
it killed people. Oops.
Again,
they didn't want. And then there's another one that I came across here, Accutane, which was actually used for acne. It turned out it causes birth defects, miscarriages, and premature death, inflammatory bowel disease. I mean, suicidal ideation. I mean,
big time.
Yeah, but again, so somehow the pharmaceutical companies are able to continue to push these drugs that are dangerous, that haven't been well researched, again, that are experimental on our children. And we keep pretending like somehow they are benign and that they have nothing but altruistic intentions. It's very bizarre.
Well, I think it's because I look at there, the cadre of anti-vaxxers, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. All my kids are vaccinated. I just got my second COVID vaccine, but I really can't fault this cadre of anti-vaxxers who are so skeptical about what the pharmaceutical companies are doing. I get it. I have a friend who's an anti-vaxxer, and she said, Maria, you know what the pharmaceutical companies are doing with these hormones. Why are you trusting them in these other areas? And I'm like, I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, and that's probably the biggest problem, is that it undermines our confidence in all areas of medicine when we have them actively pushing something that we know is harmful and dangerous. And the fact that Sweden came out recently and said, whoa, we just are realizing we're making a huge mistake. And yet here in the US, We have doctors over and over again saying puberty blockers are 100% reversible,
This is a
saying that
lie.
cross-sex hormones are completely benign, that they don't have any negative side effects. These are lies. These are doctors who are coming before state legislative hearings and lying.
Well,
And
get out your bottle of aspirin. Get out your bottle of baby aspirin, your Tylenol, whatever, just whatever you bought over the counter. Open it up and look at the contraindications.
Yeah.
Look at, you've got a big old sheet of folded up paper in there with all of the side effects, all of the possible things. If those things are potential problems with over-the-counter drugs, why would we ever believe that controlled substances are completely reversible, have no side effects? My mind is just blown that they're lying so boldly about this.
Yeah.
I'm angry today. I'm really angry today, guys.
And the other thing that is astonishing to me is that the legislators buy this fact that it's not the government's responsibility to get involved with the doctor-patient relationship. Again, the government had to get involved, and over and over and over again, the government had to get involved because companies lie when there's big bucks involved. We know the cigarette companies lied. We know the opioid producers lied. We know that the thalidomide company lied. We know that when there's big profits involved, these companies lie, which is why we have a government that's set up to protect us.
That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration. That's what the FDA is for.
Right. And so the fact that the FDA hasn't approved these medications for the use of children, let alone for the use of gender dysphoria, these have not been approved for the use of gender dysphoria. There's no drug treatment that has been proven effective for the treatment of gender dysphoria. And yet we are just throwing these medications at people when in fact we do know that cognitive behavioral therapy and other types of talk therapy are effective at treating gender dysphoria. Again, phenomenally insane.
I also think today, or a couple of days ago, I was unfortunate enough to see in the UK. So this is, an international problem, but I saw on, I think it was This Morning, which is a UK talk show, two parents who came and said that their daughter is now identifying as a boy and has done since they were 18 months old. This is a 3-year-old child we're talking about here, and the fawning and the oh, you're such wonderful parents. What is it about them that's wonderful? They're fame hungry. Clearly they're fame hungry because they're going on a talk show to talk about their child who, wants to have a haircut. It was
who is gender non-conforming. I mean, I'm thinking about my son who hated wearing clothes. Does that mean his identity as a nudist? Does that mean I shouldn't have ever put him in clothes? Because he hated wearing clothes when he was little. Well, guess what? He's all grown up now and he wears clothes and he's okay with it.
My daughter insisted she was Cleopatra forever. I mean, it came and went, but it came and went for a couple of years when she was a toddler. Like, I am Cleopatra. Call me Cleopatra. No, you're not. You're my kid. I'm sorry. We're not wealthy. We're not royalty. You're not Cleopatra. Yeah. And now she's a teenager. She no longer insists she's Cleopatra. I'm really glad I didn't have her name changed and go on the talk show tour with her.
Oh, you could have been so famous and so authentic and brave.
Yeah, this was 10, 12 years ago, back when there was some sanity. I think they would have laughed me off if I called and said, hey, I've got a child who identifies as Cleopatra. They would have hung up on me. Today,
well, really, I don't know.
Identifies as transgender.
See, and now I suspect it wouldn't be so big a deal if she's a girl, but if you had a son who was identifying as Cleopatra, whoa.
Yeah.
That would be pretty bold.
And I really want to just say, I also saw Dr. Phil, who, whatever, Dr. Phil is entertainment, okay? But he had a mother who was in such obvious distress about what was happening to her son. Her son is dressing like I don't have a better word to say it, a stripper. and performing these, acts. And Dr. Phil, instead of saying, to the mother, okay, we understand your family's going through a difficult time, he starts talking about brain sex, as if to suggest that this child or this, teenager has a different brain, and that is, and I'm just like, this is so stupid. I
Yeah.
couldn't
And it
believe what I
happens,
was
I think
watching.
that poor mother, I can't even, and this is really concerning to me too, is that I am increasingly hearing about therapists and school staff calling child services, child protective services, and reporting
Yeah.
parents for child endangerment for not using the child's chosen name or pronouns. This is how insane it's getting. I mean,
Yeah.
Maria, no wonder you're mad. We should all be mad.
Everybody
I'm furious.
should be horrified at what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to light more fires under people to say this affects all of us. This is not the crazy weird family over there that you've always thought something was wrong with. This is everybody that's affected by this.
Yeah, this is everybody. And I just want to talk about this Air Force new policy, came out May 13th, 2021. And this is what is, again, astonishing to me. It's not saying that they can have gender nonconforming people in the military. It's saying that the military has to provide access to one's identified gender. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I think what it means is that if men want to be in women's barracks and showers, that they get to be in women's barracks and showers. So this is like another opportunity that is being, where women are being put at risk. We've fought so hard to gain access to these opportunities that are just systematically being torn away from us by men who are appropriating womanhood. Womanhood is not something you appropriate. It's not something you identify into. It's something that you are. And the fact that we have this, again, another quote from our president, who came out this week and says, to all transgender Americans watching at home, especially the young people, you are so brave. Mr. Biden said in his speech, I want you to know your president has your back. And I would like to say that was our President Joe Biden on behalf of Big Pharma, pushing our kids to transition. Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I posted a Babylon Bee article on my Facebook page this week, and it was about, now that birthing person day is over, families are starting to prepare for lawn mowing person day. And, it's satire and it's funny, but a friend of mine, a guy friend of mine said, yeah, they'll attack Father's Day next and probably call it, patriarchal day. And I said, I don't think they will, because this is a men's rights movement.
You don't hear men being called prostate havers.
No.
I've never heard them insist that men be called prostate havers the way women are called
ejaculators. Maybe. Well,
I guarantee Father's Day is not going to get touched because they've already got Father's Day. Most women aren't, most of us aren't trying to be called fathers. This is men taking what women have.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all there is to it.
And it's very angry men. These are men who are bullies, and they're being enabled. They're being encouraged and enabled to bully women. And that, again, is what's so scary to me, is that typically we used to teach boys and men not to bully women. Well, just the opposite is being given. That message is being given to them now. It's really, I don't know where we go
to the military. And with respect to the military, I just would like to say, like, most people don't know, but autogynephiles are overrepresented in the military. Statistically, they are far overrepresented in these hypermasculine roles. So that, giving a green, I'm sure that this is a problem for several women who are like, I'm, let's say if you have an opportunity that is reserved for a female, all of a sudden you have this guy who can identify into it, who can beat you hands down in any of the physical capacities. It's so, and not to mention the privacy of these women, the privacy and the indignity, to be honest.
Well, and just the lie of it is what just infuriates me over and over again. I'm like, I cannot even believe that we are having to fight for our very definition. I mean, that just infuriates me. I can't think of any other civil rights movement where people's very like essence was being challenged, you know, being appropriated by another group the way it's happening here. So if you're angry, if you're upset, we're right there with you. We're feeling it, but there is hope. I do feel like, together, if we come together, we can make a difference. Come to Partners for Ethical Care, check out our website, sign up for the forums. We're going to continue to come up with actions, on the ground actions for things that you can do, templates for letters that you can send people. Really, we need to get people involved. We need to have people who stop just saying, oh yes, this is terrible, who actually pick up the phone and call their legislators, who pick up the phone and call that manufacturer who's making a product, who's just come out as like trans friendly, and explain to them how offensive this is. We need to have people who go to the schools and advocate for the kids. We need people who are actually willing to do more than just say, oh, this is terrible. We need to have people who actually get out there and take some risks. And it's hard because, as we've talked about, we get bullied. But I think, again, I keep, and I hate to do this, I hate to keep comparing this to what happened in Germany. But it reminds me so much of all the people who sat back and watched what was happening in Germany during Nazi Germany. They sort of watched it and were like, yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, I'm just glad it's not happening to us. It's just happening to them. I'm not too worried about it yet. And by the time people realized how truly horrible it was too late. And that's what I'm worried about is going to happen. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen.